If you ever felt invisible, insignificant, or stuck in survival mode, this one is for you. Because that little boy in the old black and white picture, that little boy was me. Poor, fatherless, scared, and rejected. That little boy didn't know if he will ever make it. But what he didn't know was he was being shaped for something greater.
Artlist.io.
Welcome to the High Point Talk, where we dive into life, leadership, and legacy. From the low points to the high points so you can live well, wisely, and humbly. This is your space where real stories, transformational lessons, and bold leadership are shared. And that will help you rise from pain to purpose and from survival to significance. Because we believe this, everyone has a low point, painful, raw, and real. A middle point where you wrestle, reflect, and decide, and a high point where your story becomes a spark for something greater than you. And here's the truth. Your pain has a purpose, your mess can become your message, and your lowest point might just be the beginning of your legacy. I am your host, Mena, transformational speaker, mentor, coach, and trainer. And I welcome you to the High Point Talk. Let's rise together. Let's go. I invite you to stay with me. I'm going to be talking about breaking through the low point, 3 shifts that changed my life. There was a time when life didn't offer hope for me. It only offered survival. I was born in poverty during a civil war that threatened everything in my life, in my country. Safety, future, identity. My father left my mother whenever he learned that my mom was pregnant. Gone. Completely gone. So fear overwhelmed my mom. And then when I was born into a fear-based home. So some days, food was scarce. Sometimes, there were times where my grandmother used to get chicken for us, and she would cook soup for lunch, and she will save the meat for dinner so we could have 2 meals. And joy was not an option in my home. As a child, I was small in body but carried the weight of an adult-sized pain. I didn't just grow up in a broken home. I grew up in a broken world. Those were the cards that were dealt to me. I lost 40% of my friends to war and another 50% to gang violence. Some went to prison and some other just unfortunately got killed, murdered, and that was it. That season didn't just take lives, it tried to steal our futures. But somehow, something inside me, faith, greed, a whisper of purpose, kept me going. Never gave up. Always a warrior. Fatherless, scared, poor, hopeless. Life felt like an uphill battle every single day. I woke up to fight and to survive. Fear and uncertainty clouded my days, while poverty weighed heavily on my shoulder, stripping away the innocence of childhood and replacing it with harsh realities of survival. Hope was a total distant dream for me, one I barely dared to even imagine. Yet, even in those dark moments, there was a flicker within, a quiet resilience that refused to give up and gave me the strength to fight every single day. That little boy's journey wasn't easy, but it was the beginning of a story that will be shaped by overcoming adversity and finding strength in the struggle, embracing it, face it. In the 80s, I faced darkness, completely overpower and overcome my dreams and everything. I endured the chaos of terror of a civil war where communists sought to conquer that little tiny bitty country in Central America, but not just the land, but the hearts and minds of the people of the country. But they couldn't. They could not do that. They didn't conquer my soul. They stole a lot of dreams, a lot of things, but they did not conquer my mind or my soul. Despite the violence and fear that surrounded me, I held onto something deep within, a flicker of resilience, a will to survive that refused to be extinguished. And then, after the Civil War was over and the peace agreements were signed in the early 90s, guess what? That peace followed by the streets being flooded and conquered by gangs. Yeah, the streets became the battleground once again, not for political power this time, but for survival against the grip of gang violence. The darkness took on a new form. And I found myself navigating a world where safety was a luxury and the future felt completely uncertain, as it has been during the Civil War. In fact, sometimes I felt safer during the war than when the gangs started taking over the streets. The gangs robbed me not just of peace, but of precious moments of my youth, experiences that should have been rites of passage during my teenage years. Instead of carefree days, I lived under a cloud of danger, always looking over my shoulders, never truly feeling safe or at ease. As I mentioned before, the war took about 40% of my friends. All of them. And then the gangs took another toll, and the list grew longer with another approximately 50% of my childhood friends that they were captured, they were bullied into the gangs. It was as though my youth was being chipped away piece by piece, with each loss leaving a scar that time could never fully heal. I felt scared, I felt angry, I felt hopeless. So the question that haunted me for years was, what happened to me? Why did I survive? Similar to a survival guilt. I didn't emerge unscratched, but nevertheless, I emerged. And in the midst of the war, I learned to fight for hope. That kept me going. In the grip of gang violence, I learned to hold on to what little light I had left. And I became a survivor in the truest sense of the word, a warrior, fighting every single day, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. The forces, the dark forces that sought to break me, whether bullets or blades, threats of fear, could not touch the resilience that grew in my heart. And the statistics didn't define my fate. I didn't let that do the case. Where so many were lost, I found something worth fighting for. I found the courage to push forward, to refuse to stay like a victim and let my circumstances dictate who I will become. And day after day, I woke up, I showed up, and I fought. I emerged from the ashes of war and the darkness of violence, determined to live for something greater, more than survival. But my story didn't end in tragedy. It became the testament to the unbreakable spirit within me. I never gave up. I have always been a fighter. Throughout the battles of my life, one thing remained constant: my faith in God. That was the foundation. That was the foundation of everything that kept me going. My belief anchored me in the chaos of war and the following struggles, even when everything else seems to crumble. And one day, later on in life, reading this as known as the ancient book, a letter from a first century scholar and religious leader telling to people that are under persecution, oppressed by a government, telling them, do not be conformed to the world any longer with its superficial values and customs, but be transformed, progressively change as you mature spiritually by the renewing of your mind. And that did it for me. The renewing of your mind. Because if you can change the way you think, you can change the way you feel, then you can change the way you act. And that's what I got from this. Focus on great values, on godly values and ethical attitudes. And those words seems to leap off the page and pierce through layers of pain that I had in my soul. Doubt, fear. Those words from this author, who, by the way, was in prison, he is encouraging these people that are being persecuted. They challenge me to rise above limitation imposed by the world's chaos and to seek higher purpose in my life through the transformation of my mind, which I love the word because the etymology of the transformation is metamorphosis. A painful change from worm to a beautiful butterfly. So this awakening didn't happen in isolation. So I continue digging and digging and digging and doing a lot of work in my mind, in my soul, in my spirit, and never gave up. And I remember the day when I was meeting with my friend Josh Varner, who introduced me to an amazing concept that helped me a lot to overcome a lot of my trauma, a lot of my wounds, and a lot of all the scars that I had in my life. Josh helped me understand that trauma wasn't just something to be endured. It could be a catalyst for growth as well. He introduced me to the concept post-traumatic growth. Most people know about post-traumatic stress disorder, which I fit the criteria for everything that happened in my childhood and in my teen years. And he introduced me to post-traumatic growth. The idea that surviving hardship doesn't only have to lead to scarred, but can instead be the foundation for incredible personal development and strength. It was an amazing revelation that opened my eyes to a wider spectrum, to the possibility that every struggle that I have faced in my life that nearly broke me and almost killed me could actually be the means to reveal myself and even stronger. So with my faith guiding me, the transformative power of Scripture grounded me, and a new insight on growth challenging me, I decided to take action. So I want to share with you today the 3 decisions, the shifts that change everything in my life. Shift number 1, I choose ownership over victimhood. Shift number 2, I renew my mind with the truth. And shift number 3, I saw my trauma as a training ground. These moves weren't just step forward. They were patterned shifts in the way I live and thought. So the scars from the past didn't disappear, but they became symbols of resilience rather than reminders of pain. I was no longer a survivor. I had become a man determined to live significantly. I had learned to embrace the growth that came from that adversity from my childhood to find purpose in the process and to use my journey as a testament to be the transformative power of faith and perseverance in my life. The boy who grew up in war, the young man who navigated the dangers of broken society, had not only survived, he had found a way to thrive. And now, with a heart full of gratitude, with joy in my heart and a spirit prepared for greater things, I walk forward, sharing the lessons I learned, inspiring others to do the same, and leaving proof that no darkness, listen to me, no darkness is too deep for the light of transformation. So that paradigm shift in my mind, the renewing of my mind, plus the post-traumatic stress, post-traumatic growth in my mind, it came the statement that I started thinking about. So think, feel, act. If you can change the way you think, you can change the way you feel. Therefore, you can change the way you act. And I moved from being a conformer to be a transformer. So here are the decisions. Shift number 1. I choose ownership over victimhood. I stopped asking myself, why me? And started asking, what now? I couldn't change my past, but I could change what it meant. Do not let your past define you. Let your past inform you. Don't let it control you. I took ownership of my healing, my future, my identity. I stopped waiting for someone to save me and started becoming the man God have called me to be. So that was shift number 1. I choose ownership over victimhood. Shift number 2, I renewed my mind with the truth. That's why I was telling you, this author that I'm mentioning is the Apostle Paul. I'm a person of faith. And that Bible verse changed my life. That scripture from Romans wasn't just a Bible verse for me. It was a lifeline. When I read, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, everything clicked for me. That was it. The world tried to conform me with fear, trauma, and lies, but I chose to think differently. I exchanged despair for purpose, pain for growth. I became a growth-oriented person, and fear for faith. Shift number 3, I saw my trauma as a training ground. I want you to listen to me very carefully. I'm not minimizing trauma. And I'm not saying that post-traumatic stress disorder is not real. I'm not saying that. Don't hear what I'm not saying. This is my story, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. I hope that you may find something that you can use. I hope that you are encouraged by what I'm sharing with you. But I want you to hear me up. I understand trauma is trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder is that. And I'm not minimizing any of that. I'm just sharing my story with you. But I saw my trauma, which I have a lot, as a training ground. Pain didn't just mark me. It matured me. With the help of people like my friend Josh and many other people that invested in me, I learned about post-traumatic growth, how adversity, when processed and owned, can become the very soil where growth takes root. I stopped seeing trauma as the end of my story and started using it as a fuel for my future. So, that little boy didn't become a man because life got easy. Not at all. He became a man because he refused to quit. he refused to quit. I refuse to quit. And every day, it's an everyday battle. I still wake up, get up, show up, embrace it, grinding, pushing forward, pressing forward. So that little boy didn't become a man because life got easier. He became a man because he refused to quit. And he went from pain to purpose, from that low to legacy, and you can do it too. So these 3 shifts were just the beginning for me. And if they work for me, they can also work for you as well. So here's my challenge. Own your story. Renew your mind. Let your scars speak of strength, not shame. You're not stuck. You're being shaped. You're not forgotten. You're being formed. And you are not done. The best chapters of your life are still ahead of you. Move from a victim to a victor, from a survivor to a fighter. And I encourage you to keep pressing forward. So I hope I added value to you through this chapter. And if this episode spoke to your soul, I ask you, please enjoy it, process it, take action, like the video, comment below, subscribe to the High Point Talk, and share this with someone in the low point, because that is what we are here for. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the week. I'll see you next week with episode number 3. This is the High Point Talk, and I am your host, Mena. Love you guys. Be well.